A few years into being sober, I caught myself doing the exact same thing I swore I was done with. And it wasn't drinking. The thing underneath the drinking is what caused the problems. And I remember the question that showed up for me. I thought to myself, I'm sober. I did the hard part. Why am I still like this? Like, why are these things still coming up that are causing me problems? And if you've asked yourself that question before, this video is for you. It took me years to get honest with myself and find an answer to the question that I had of I've eliminated the drinking, so why am I still like this? And I'll leave some context for this. Like, you don't have to be a drinker. It could be many different problems that you are trying to overcome or change or be a better person, eating, any type of addiction whatsoever. Like when we make these changes, we kind of create a hole in our personality because that addiction or problem filled that hole in our lives. And so when we removed it, well, that doesn't necessarily stop the triggers and the challenges and the issues that you deal with. And so that question, kept coming up for me is why am I still like this? Quick context if you're new here, I left the polygamous community at 18 and kept doing the same things anyway. The environment was gone and the beliefs came with me, but um, the drinking started once I left the religion. In 2017, I got sober and I thought that was the finish line ultimately. And getting through the quitting, that was really tough. And I figured that life would just kind of fix itself. That was the deal I thought I was making ultimately, is I'm leaving drinking behind and now my life will just get all better. And here's what actually happened. Sobriety didn't fix any of my patterns. It made them possible to see the same fights I would have with, whoever I was dating, uh, the same moves I would make under pressure, if I had an argument with my boss or I would blame it on the job and not myself. And it was really just a different day and a different pattern. And that's when I realized that the real work could actually start. Once I had eliminated that bad habit of drinking, that's when the hard work could actually begin. So the drinking actually was never the pattern. It was how I managed those behaviors. And the beliefs that ran with me were installed long before I ever picked up a drink. I drank at the fillings to get rid of those feelings that, caused me issue. So when you take away the substance, the beliefs are still there. Now it's nothing standing in between me and them. It just made it that much more challenging to deal with life in general. And actually life felt a lot harder. And that's why sobriety can feel a lot more difficult than it does being calm. And I can't tell you how many times I thought that if I just quit drinking, things would change. But quitting was ultimately just escaping that substance or that issue or that behavior. And it is not the same as being free or what, kept sending me to that coping mechanism. Now I know the difference. And one is escaping, really. And then the other one is when I'm free myself from that addiction, now I can actually start to feel. And that's when the challenges actually start to come in because you have to face them. Continue to repeat patterns over and over, especially with relationships. And I would blame the other person. And in 2020, I wrote a book called The Cheat Codes. And the cheat codes, I really talked about these patterns and my process in going back and getting past the addiction and going to the source. And a lot of that lived in my childhood. And to me at the time, that was surprising, believe it or not, even growing up in a cult. You don't know what you don't know as a child, and so you accept a lot of it. And I started to understand where a lot of my insecurities came from, and where a lot of these false beliefs lived in my childhood. And how I needed to accept those things, whether they were good or bad or horrible or not right or not fair. If I didn't accept them, they would continue to consume me, and they would continue to drive my behavior. And I knew I had to work through a process to trace and discover where those things originally formed in my understanding of myself, so that I could ultimately fix the issue that had grown into a big problem in my adulthood. Because for relationships and things like that, it was insecurities that would cause me to have a challenge with a romantic relationship. And I would blame it on the other person, but the insecurity was ultimately with myself. So I still practice this today, and I'm putting a lot more effort into it in creating an app that what I did on paper, you can actually do in deep work through an application. And I challenge everyone to start with a piece of paper. So tonight you can grab a piece of paper and take the thing that you keep reaching for now, that let's say you're past some other hang up or issue, whether the scrolling or the overworking or the saying yes when you mean no, the going quiet. Write down 3 things. 1, the thing that you reach for. 2, the feeling that shows up right before you reach for it. And 3, what you would have done with the exact feeling before you quit. If the honest answer is to number 3 is the substance, you may have just found what the drinking or the scrolling or whatever it was that was managing it. And that feeling is that trial. So follow it. And it can lead you down to that belief underneath. And you don't have to fix anything tonight. You don't have to come to any conclusions. But this is a process in which you use to say, I felt a certain way when I used that addiction or issue or challenge, and it hid this from me or whatever it was. But what was the feeling you felt before you reached for that thing? And then you go to ask yourself the question, when do I remember first feeling that feeling in my entire life? So back to that moment I opened up with, sober, doing everything right, and the pattern fired anyway. Here's what I couldn't see then. I wasn't falling for the addiction anymore, but I was actually finally standing up to that layer, the substance that never let me reach deeper. The alcohol was actually preventing me from going deeper. So if you're stuck after getting sober or after quitting something challenging, it doesn't mean it isn't working, the process that you're going through. It just means you can finally see and work on the real thing. And there's a version of you that, couldn't do that before. So that's not failure. That's just a stage. So oftentimes when I talk to people who are overcoming alcohol, it's like they get to that 6-month or 1-year mark and things start to get really hard. And they get consumed with sadness and with despair because they think, oh man, I'm never going to get over this. But it's actually not true. You're actually just getting to that next step of being able to actually feel. And once you can actually feel, that's when you do this work of going down. So I wrote a short guide that walks you through finding the pattern underneath these things. So comment pattern and I'll send it to you. I do a new video every Thursday, so I'll see you here.